Hello, today I'm going to be showing you how to use Photoshop. This version is Photoshop CC. It's the most current version and it's cloud-based, so you get all the updates as soon as Adobe pushes them out. I'm not a big fan of the subscription base, but I'm fortunate enough to have a university ID, so I get a big student discount because of my email address. So if you're a student and you have a school email address, I would look into using that to subscribe to anything Adobe related because you do get discounts for it. Right now I have a document open on my desktop, just a blank letter-sized document. And we're just going to kind of run through things quickly, and then we'll get into more depth and detail on those tools and presets and palettes as they come up in the things that we're doing on screen. So to start out, under your edit menu, the first thing you want to kind of make sure you do if you're newer to Photoshop and you've never done it before is go to the color setting and make sure that you have either Adobe RGB or sRGB selected. I tend to stick with Adobe RGB. It's been around for a long time. Most people in the design world are using this, and it's compatible with a wide range of monitors and devices. If you're using a digital camera, you can also go into your camera settings and also set that to Adobe RGB. And that will ensure that your color space matches from camera to computer. And when you produce your images, what you see on your screen and from your camera is what is going to get printed or what people will see online. It's very important to have a matching color space. In fact, Adobe will actually yell at you and say, you imported an image in with a different color space, it would say, hey, this color space doesn't match my color space. What do you want me to do here? And you have to make a decision. So it helps to have everything matching up front. How I got this document open, if you don't know, is I basically just went File, New, and I chose a new document. It's paper-based. You wouldn't really notice that because it says custom here. If I say US paper, it's 8.5 by 11, and all I had done was change it from inches to pixels because we're working in a online format. The resolution is also set at 300, which if you're going to print, you could actually half that to 150, and your print will look just as beautiful, if not better, and you'll use less ink. Because we're working mainly on internet-based image right now, I'm going to go to 72. 72 pixels per inch is the max resolution online. Now if I were to change this back to inches, you'll see that things have changed here a little bit. And that's because we messed with the resolution. So if I were to go back to US paper and then change that to 72, now I can go to inches and change it to pixels. And you'll see that it's much smaller. The resolution doesn't only increase your pixel density, but it will change your document sizes if you're not careful. So make sure your document size is set, or your resolution is set, as well as your document size. If I go back to inches, you'll see my resolution stayed at 72, and that stayed. Where the last time when initially it had changed on us because I changed the resolution after the fact. And then I just hit OK. And this is what this document is. It's a 8.5 by 11 inch, 72 pixel per inch document. Over here on the right hand side, you have all your palettes. You have your history palette, Matte Navigator, histogram, and these are going to be possibly different on your screen depending on how you have this set up. I can, for instance, open this histogram, pop it out, and then close it. And now I no longer have a histogram over here. And that's very nice because you can customize these palettes to your workflow. Excuse me. This drop-down menu up here actually has built-in presets for things that you may do often. Like say you were going to do photography. If you were to select photography, it would change this palette all up. You wouldn't even have a color swatch anymore. It would be a histogram front and center because that's an important thing when you're photo editing. I tend to keep it on essential and then just kind of add or subtract the things that I know I'm going to use or not use. And that comes with time and experience when you start to learn the things that you like to use or need to use often. Way over here on the left-hand side, we have our toolbar. If you don't like it down and long and vertical, I could actually make it fat and go double wide on it. I kind of prefer the long, thin palette just because it's more out of the way. The more real estate I have here, the better. You can zoom in more on your document and use the hand tool. I'm holding the space bar here to make that little hand appear. And then I can adjust as I need. And you can see the zoom level, I'm at 300%, which is a lot. If I were to double click this space or the magnifying glass, it puts it at 100% and fits it to my screen. You can also do a lot of those things just by coming up here. I have the magnifying glass selected, so these tools have now changed to suit the magnifying glass tool. I can fit the screen, I can fill the screen, I can resize window to fit, you can zoom all your windows, grubby zoom. What that means is if I come down here, you can, actually I don't know what that means. I'll find out. If I want to make it smaller, I can click the minus, and then every time I click, it's gonna boom, shrink it down 100%. Let's just go fit screen for now and move on to our next tool. At the top here is your move tool. That's what I was just doing basically by holding the space bar. Was moving my image around. This tool is a little bit different. It'll move objects on the screen, which you can't do because the background is locked. What's that mean? I have a locked background. That means I can't change a thing on this background except possibly the color. But I'd have to unlock it first, and then it becomes layer 0. Now it's different than a normal background because it's been modified. I have a photograph open here just while we're on these layers, just to show you something. I'm going to get rid of this copy I have already. And here's an image of a bird that I grabbed from the internet just as an example. This is a locked background image. Say this is your image. You just got it off your camera. You're going to do some editing. Do you really want to edit your only copy of this image and possibly ruin it? No, you really don't want to do that. So here's a handy little tip. Rather than making a second copy of all your images, all you need to do in Photoshop is click and drag this layer down to this icon. This is your new layer icon. It looks like a little page curling. If I were to click and drag down to this icon and then let go, it creates a copy of my background image. I can just simply turn this little eyeball off, and now my background image is completely hidden from view. I can't see it. It's locked, so I can't touch it. And this copy layer is highlighted. If I click here, that layer is highlighted and active, but you can't see it. If I click on this layer, I'm now working on this layer. I'm manipulating this layer. I can do whatever I want to it, and I know that my original image is safe and sound. So if I were to do something crazy like draw a circle over this bird and fill it with black or white, black would be Control Delete or backspace, and then Control D to deselect. I just put this big black circle on my bird. I ruined that image. If that was your photograph and you screwed up and saved it, oops, now you have a ruined picture. Or if I hide that layer and look at this layer, you can see my original image is safe and sound, no big ugly black circle on it. Fortunately for us, though, we haven't saved anything. So if I just go Control Z and then Control Alt Z and then one more time and then one more time, I basically stepped backwards in time, undoing all the changes I made. And you can actually see that in the history window. All the things that you've done are in the history window. So it's kind of helpful to be able to go back in time and see what you've done there if you need to. So anyway, back to our tools. This bird actually might be a little bit easier to work with for some of these tools, and this layer of our blank document will be for some other tools. Let's do the type tool on this blank layer here. We'll go down to the T, which is our type tool, and you'll notice a lot of these actually tools, most of them anyway, have a little arrow that points downwards, and that's just other tools or other options for that tool. If I were to click that little downward arrow, it's persnickety sometimes, but you have a vertical type tool, a type mask tool, or a horizontal type mask tool. And we'll get into what some of these things are later, but basically just lets you type up and down rather than left or right like a normal human would type. But when you're making a document, sometimes it's handy to have your text go down the side of a page, as a big long word as opposed to across. So we'll keep it normal. Look at the top here. Now that the type tool is selected, this menu bar is also changed. It's no longer the magnifying glass tools, it's the type tools. We're using the Verdana font. It's regular. I could make it bold or italic. It's at 60 points. It's going to be sharp. It's going to be black. So that's what we want, big black text. And I'm just going to type hi. Now the thing with a type tool is once you type something and you want to manipulate it, you need to get off of that tool. So I'm going to go down here to the path selection tool, which is right below it. And now I can click. Oh, I can. See that? Because there's no path. Now, however, this tool here will allow me to move that object around wherever you want. And that comes in handy because sometimes you put something somewhere and you didn't quite want it there, you want it over here. And that's to zoom in on this eye. Oops, I'm still in a little. Let's go to magnify. We're going to zoom in. You can see how it's getting down to the pixel level. Each little square here is a pixel. That's what they mean by pixels per inch. On a print document, you have 72 of these per inch. And you can manipulate all these pixels. I'm going to double click and zoom back out a little bit. I'm just going to get it a little bit tighter. And that's about good. But say you want that font to be a little bit bigger. Go back to your type tool. Make sure you're still on that original font layer. And then just kind of click within your letters. If you clicked elsewhere, it would actually add a new layer and you'd be typing somewhere else, not where you want to be. I can actually highlight by clicking and dragging, and I can change things up. So right now it's set to sharp, but let's say I want it to be smooth. And you can kind of see the edges, how they change there. Let's go back to our magnifying glass, and you can kind of see the edges are much fuzzier. And the reason for that is it's added all these extra little straight out and white artifacts to the edges of the text. And that can be handy for some things, for making your print look a lot better. It looks pretty smooth on the screen at the normal size. And people aren't normally going to be zooming in this deep. I mean, we're at 1600% right now, zoom. So you can kind of see the change that made. Let's go back to our type tool. Oops. Let's Control Z. Control Z. Actually, let's just delete that layer because it's going to be easier. I didn't carefully click into my text. You can see what happens there. I added a new layer, and that's not what we want. We want to be working on our original text on our original layer. And then I'm going to highlight while it's zoomed in, and you can kind of just see, if I go to strong, it really puts on that extra stuff on the edges. None, of course, would be just the letter. And that's kind of what we want for this next little thing we're going to be doing here. And as you can see now, it's just a hard edge with no feathering or smoothing of the color shapes around it. And if we zoom all the way out, you can see it still looks pretty crisp and sharp. It just doesn't have that extra crap, which is what you want right now. Now I'm going to go to the pen tool, which is this little guy right here. Pen tool. And I'm going to create a new layer here just to kind of give you an idea. I'm going to hide the high right now. So it's still there, we just hid it. This pen tool is very tricky for a lot of people to use. They'll click and they'll click and they'll click, and this tool is weird. What's the point of it? What they don't realize is how powerful it is. I just Control-Alt-Z all the way back to get rid of all what I had just done there, in case you were wondering. If you click and then come over here and click again, that creates a line segment. I'm sure you've seen these in school. If I were to click a second time, but hold the button down and then drag while I'm still holding the left click, you'll see these handles appear. These handles are how I can control my line and the curve of that line. So if I dragged it way out, for instance, there's a big curve. Now you see how this line, this handle here, this is my line dot, that's this dot. This is this handle, and this dot is that handle. And you can manipulate those, and we'll show you that soon. But just know the direction of this line, that's going to be the direction of your next curve. So if I were to click over here, my curve is going to be going out to the left as such. So rounded curve going that direction. Now if I were to click and drag here, and this line is going upwards, if I were to click down, my curve is going to kind of round upwards. And if I click over here, my curve is going to round downwards. Oops, I'm sorry, upwards again, because it's an upward handle. And then we'll just kind of finish this path off here, just add a few more points. Now, watch the cursor carefully when I get to where I started. That little circle that shows up right below my cursor, my pen tool. There, it's not. When you see that, that means you're going to close the path. Now all this path has been joined in one solid shape. Now to manipulate this, you don't use this tool at the moment. You're going to come down here, and this is your path selection tool. The black arrow, or the black path selection tool, selects the entire path. And only if I click off of it, all my anchor points disappear from view. They're still there. Click the path and they show back up. And that's about all you can do with this tool, is move around the entire path. However, if you click the little drop down arrow, if it will open for me, there's the direct selection tool. That's the white arrow. What this tool does is it will allow you to select just the one anchor point. If I just select that one anchor point, I can just move it wherever I want. And then I can grab these little handles and adjust my curve. I can drive it in and straighten it out. I can completely change the curve. Oops, don't want to do it that way. If you did, you'd want to minimize both of these first. And then I can change my curve. So now it's curving down and more upward, this direction. So these handles are what you got to get used to. It's the way they're moving is the way this line is going to flow. Now it's an upwards to the right as opposed to a diagonal to the left. What about the points we made here and there that have no anchor points on them? Like these two guys. But you want to make it rounded, not a hard angle. Well, you come back to your pen tool here, but you're going to go down to convert point tool. And that'll give us this funny little arrow. And if I click and drag the direction I want my curve to be going, I have now turned that single point into a curved point. This is called Bezier curves, by the way. And I can do the same thing for this guy, and I can create a curved point there. I think there was a couple more in here. I think this guy's, yeah, he doesn't have one either. And doesn't need to have one. You know, it's nice sometimes to have a solid, hard angle, and you'll see that in a second. But oftentimes you may need to have a curve. If you do have a curve, you can turn it into a single just by clicking on it with that tool. Now the handles are gone. So it converts it both ways. I can change these back. And it's indefinite. That's kind of a basic introduction to the pen tool, but you can actually do a lot of things with it, especially if you draw carefully. You know, I can make a square shape, which, you know, Photoshop builds the shape for you, so there's no need to build it by hand, but it's there if you wanted to. So what about our text layer? Let's go ahead and actually just delete this layer because it's all just garbage. Let's turn high back on. And did I switch layers at some point? Because these guys are showing up. And they should not be. I'm just going to delete them out. Yeah, I must have been drawing on my type layer at some point. So sorry for that confusion. When we're back on our high layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a new layer above it. And I'm going to select my pen tool. And when I say I'm going to add a new layer above it, all I'm doing is clicking add a new layer, or create a new layer. And that will automatically create layers above. I'm going to go ahead and delete those extras that I made. Don't show me that again. Yes, I want to delete it. And I want to delete layer 2 as well. So I have my background layer, I have my text layer, and I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer here. Oops, I got to click the lock. Now you see a lock here. Now I can't adjust anything on this layer. Oops. As far as this text goes, I can't hurt it. But now we're drawing on a brand new layer above our high layer. And what I'm going to do is simply just click each corner of this H. And basically we're outlining it as a path. This is good practice for this tool. And as you can see, I'm not being all that careful. I'm just going to clicking where it needs to be. Roughly. You know, don't squint your eyes and freak out if it's not perfect. And then come back to where you're going to close your path. You see that little circle show up. You know you're going to close your path. And if I hide this high layer for now, you'll see that I have an H pretty much outlined. It's not perfect, but it's close. If I put this layer back on, what we can now do is zoom in a little bit. And go to our white direct select tool here. And I can click on this little guy and put him where he belongs. And the rest of these look pretty good. This one down here is a little off. We'll put him where he belongs. Now you can see each little point is in its corner where it belongs. Meaning I've accurately traced this H. If I hide, now you can see it's a perfect letter H. So you're probably wondering, what do I do now? What's the point of that? Well, now it's a path. If you look over here in your palette, you have this path tab, and you can see my work path. If I hit Control and then click, maybe I'm lying, is it Alt? I got to Control click in the square. Click. There we go. Control double click in the square. Control click. I have my path. Now it's got the marching ants. That's a selection. Kind of like how you have your selection tools here that give you the marching ants. That H that I drew is now selected. When it's selected like this, you can now do things with it. Say I want to fill it with a color. Let's make it nice and red. Now the red over here is my foreground color. So if I hold Alt, and then backspace, it fills it with that color. Now I can hit Control D and deselect my path. And now I have a big red letter H. If I go back to my path tool, you'll see that it's still there. I can actually Control click on that box again, and it will reselect my path. So I've not lost the path. That's what's important, is you can always reselect all that work you spent with your pen tool. Now if I come back into my layers palette and turn on the high and go up here to my move tool, I can move this H that I made off of the original copy. And I've redrawn the letter H basically. Not super useful, but it's good to get an idea of how the tool works. I recommend doing other letters like a G that have curves to it. And in fact, let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer. And I'm going to delete high. Oops, I guess I had to actually delete it. I'm just dragging it down. And I can't see how it's not letting me delete. There's that little circle with this line through it saying nuh-uh. That's because it's locked. So I need to unlock that layer. And then delete. So we'll go back to our type. Actually, I'm going to hit the letter D. And you'll see these colors change to the default, black and white. Now, we'll go into that, but the X will swap those colors around, which is a handy little shortcut when you're working out here and don't want to come all the way over here to hit these little arrows, which will swap the colors as well. If I'm over here working on, I need the color white, or whatever colors I have selected at the time, I can quickly use two colors at once just by hitting the X key. And then when you want your default black and white back, simply hit D, and boom, they're there. Let's go ahead and do our type tool. I'm actually going to make this font a little bit bigger. Let's go to 72, and we'll type a big letter G. As you can see, you can't really see it. That's all right. We'll fix that. And we'll go back to our pen tool. Now, if I hold the space bar, see I have a little hand. I can actually drag my document downwards. And we're zoomed in quite a bit there, and we're seeing the jagged edges. Now, on a letter like an H, that's not so bad. But on a letter like a G, you can kind of see how the pixels operate to give you that curved shape. Now, mind you, we're zoomed in 1600%, and if I were to zoom out, it's a okay looking G. You can kind of see how rough it looks. And that's because of our font, or the setting we had. Let's go ahead and highlight over this G. And right here it says none, that's for smoothing. Watch what happens when we say crisp or smooth. It uses lighter colors of the black to give it a more rounded, smooth shape, as you can see. And again, we'll zoom out to a normal viewing angle, and that G looks much, much better. So again, that's not something you're normally going to be playing with a lot. I basically turn it to none for that H to give us that hard line to go down. But on most letters, you're going to have it like this. So let's go back to our pen tool and let's see how we would create this letter G. I would click here, and then I'm going to click here, but now I need a curve. So I'm probably going to go right about here or so, and it's not precise. You can always fix it in the end. And I'm going to click and drag my curve to pretty much match. And then I'll come over here and we'll do the same thing. And then up to here. And then we have a straight line there. Straight line here. There. There. And then coming into this curve again, we'll be doing the same thing but on the inside. And I'm going to close my path. See the little circle show up? That means I'm closing the path. Now this G obviously is going to need a little bit of work, and that's fine. So we'll go in here, we'll zoom in a little tighter so we can kind of see my handles and things a little better. And back to my tool. And the first thing we're going to look at is that. We don't want our line coming way out here making this little swoop. I'm going to take this handle and then just bring it all the way in. And don't worry if it goes a little bonkers on you, because you can always come over here to this handle and adjust. And I'll bring this down a little. Oops, grabbed the wrong part. Make sure you grab the anchor point and not the handle. And get that more to the outside. And then I can tighten that curve up a little bit. And you can always add more points in your path if you need to. But for this purpose, I think we're looking all right. Maybe less than the severity. Actually, no, I'm going to increase it. And then this guy, I don't want this big rounded curve. I got a lot of wasted space right there. I'm just going to simply click my handle and shrink it down. You can kind of rotate your angle here. And see, this is where we're going to have a slight problem. I went minimal on my anchor points, so I'm not going to get a perfect match. No problem. Come to your anchor point tool, add anchor point, and I can add an anchor point right here. And I'll click and drag to make sure it's able to be adjusted rounded wise. And let's add another one here just to be on the safe side. And that should do it. And then I'll come back to my direct selection tool, and now I can bring this back out around that corner. I can actually bring this guy in now a little bit more, and then use the handle to bring the curve out. And tighten this guy up a little bit. And minimize that top curve a little. And now you can see we have a pretty good letter G here. Let's fix this anchor point, put it there, get these guys straight. You here, you there. And now we're pretty good. And I did not do this on its own layer, but that's okay. I can do that after the fact. I can go new layer. I can go to my path. I can control click on that little box. And now I have my path outlined on this layer, not this layer. And if I were to, again, let's go to blue color. I'm going to drag down to the blues. Go with this nice shade of blue here. And we'll fill it with Alt backspace. And then Control D to deselect. And you can see where I wasn't perfect on the edges here, but when you have those filled in colors, it makes it a little rougher. That's all right. Look, when you zoom out, that's a pretty good looking letter G. So you get my move tool and move it to the side. That's pretty darn close. That's a way you can practice the move tool. I'm sorry, the pen tool and all the other little sub tools it has. Add anchor points, remove anchor points, convert the anchor point, and then the freeform, which you won't use all that much. Now let's move on to some more fun things. Let's go to this bird layer, for instance. So you want to take this bird and get him off this background. Well, one tool you can use for that is the pen tool, of course. By clicking and dragging, excuse me, and working your way around the shape of this bird, you can, I'm going to do this pretty quick here, not be 100% perfect and accurate, because you can spend a lot of time with the pen tool getting a perfect selection. That's one method you can do. But let's not do that for this. That's going to take us forever and a day. What we're going to do is look at some of our other tools that we have, other options we have. And one of those would be your quick selection tool or your magic wand tool. Let's go with the magic wand tool first, because this guy has been around for a long time. Now you do want to make a few changes to its settings to give it a little bit better accuracy. I usually use a 3x3 average, and when I select things, it'll actually look at the pixels 3x3 rather than just one single pixel. And then your tolerance level, you see how I get those little arrows if I go right above on the word tolerance? If I click and drag, I can actually scrub the size of my tolerance. You can do that for a lot of the things in Photoshop, so be aware that if you ever put the cursor on the word where you can actually type in, I can actually type in this field as well. I can also click and drag. It's just kind of personal preference, whatever you find quicker. But let's say we'll go with 10, 11. Now when I come in this image, if I click this black, it's going to select the black. But I didn't select all the black in the image. If you wanted to select all the black, I'm going to hit Control D here, deselect. If I uncheck contiguous and then select black, it will select all the black. That could be a bad thing or it could be a good thing. Maybe I didn't want his eye selected. It didn't get his eye because of my tolerance, but it's possible that eye could have been selected. If I select a lighter color, no, I'm selecting within that bird too, and we don't really want that. That's why I tend to always keep this box checked. And I just hit Control deselect to deselect everything. So now if I select this light shade in the tree, the bird remains untouched. I'm going to bump my tolerance up a little bit more here. Now if I hold Shift, I can keep adding to my selection. You can see all these little guys in the tree. And I'm going to add these green things. As you can see, I'm getting a pretty good outline of this bird just by holding Shift and clicking around the image. And one thing, if you're going to be cropping something like this bird, you can save yourself a lot of time clicking by going to your crop tool, which is right here, right below your eyedropper. I don't need to worry about all this tree, so let's crop that out. I don't want to lose his foot too much. And I don't need to worry about all this green below his tail. Oops. Helps if I, right about there. If I get in tight on this bird, I have less to deal with. And that's what we're all about, is saving time and being efficient. Now when I go back to my eyedropper tool, I don't have to worry about plucking all that crap in the tree. I can just Oops, not eyedropper tool. I meant magic wand tool. Which again, I'm not selecting. It's up here. And now I can just get this little junk here. I can get this stuff here. And there's tons of ways to select things within a photograph. This and the pen tool are some of the most common. This is probably the speediest way, but not always the most accurate or efficient way. Depends on the background. A plain background, this works very well. You basically click once and your subject is isolated. When it's a busier background like this, it can be a little bit more difficult to get a perfect cut. And you'll see what I mean by that in a moment. And there we go. It's pretty much outlined. If I hit Control, Shift, and I, now my selection is around the bird and not the background. What I did was invert my selection. And then if I hit Control J, it'll put my selection on its own layer. If I hide this layer, you can see I did a pretty good job of cutting that bird out of the background, but it messed up here and there. So it's not the best. This is a harder image to cut. So what else? What other options do we have? You can do a mask where you paint away what you don't want using your black and white. And if I were to click this little icon here, edit in quick mask, you see how it has a little pink background on it? Now if I were to get my paintbrush tool and my brush tool, I can paint. And what this mask is doing, I'm painting a mask. Now if on your keyboard to the right of your P key, you have those bracket keys, left and right brackets. If I hit the right bracket, I get a bigger brush. But it's soft. See how it fades? That's not quite what I want because it's fading into the bird a little bit. So if I hold Shift in that bracket key, it's making it harder or softer. And if you look at this little icon right up here on the brush tool, you'll see it change. See how it's getting softer on the edges? That's a very soft brush. If I click once, it's got a big fade around the center. Not quite what we're looking for. We want a harder edge because we're trying to be precise here. So I'm going to hold Shift in the right bracket, and now I have a very hard edge. It makes a perfect circle. And we can basically paint into this layer mask. I'm being careful not to get on the bird, and I'll get more smaller and closer here. And I'll shrink our brush with the left little bracket key, which again is next to the P. You have the little squiggly bracket, and then the curly brace, and then the regular brace. That's the two keys I'm touching. And I can get in here a little better and get this tree out of the way. And it helps when you're doing this kind of work to really get in tight to your image. And go back to my brush tool. And because I'm zoomed in, I can really shrink my brush down, and I can get in here in these wings, and you can draw around them and just paint away the background. And you might be wondering, well, what's that doing? Well, it's creating a mask. I'm going to mask the background from view. And if you look at your path, we haven't created one yet. So if I click the quick mask tool again, let me zoom out so you can see what I just did. What I've painted away is outside of my selection. And if I put the quick mask back on, you can see when I'm painting in black, I'm taking away from. Black removes. If I were to switch my colors, go to the brush tool, I'm going to hit B. I'm on the brush tool. And if I hit X, now my foreground is white. That's a little shortcut I told you about earlier. This is where it kind of comes in handy. I can paint that away. And now if I hit the mask, you'll see I've unselected this area because it's no longer part of the mask. Let's click on the mask tool again and we'll hit X, go back to black, and we'll paint that back in. And we're going to get tighter up on this bird. So this way it can be quicker than the pen tool again for flowing long, soft lines. Or you can use this method initially and then go into your wand tool. You know, especially here on the foot, because this foot was a problem area. Let's zoom in. And then go back to our brush tool. I'm just hitting B. And let's shrink our brush. Now we can kind of go around his little toes and keep the detail that we want and not the detail we don't want. And get our brush a little bigger again. And if you screw up and go, oops, all you gotta do is hit X and paint away your oops. So it's a very nice way to work. And then hit X again and go back to where you were. As you can see, we're slowly but surely getting closer and closer to this bird's body and making our path that much better. And again, you can spend a lot of time doing this. And the more time you spend, the better your outcome. And I'm just gonna purposely here go a little bit quicker. Get around his beak. Crank it down some more so I can get in these little tighter areas. And same for this foot. You know, we'll get in this detail here. Get around it. Get around it. And you might be wondering why you'd want to do something like this. Well, if you want to make a photo montage or make something funny or interesting or combine photos together or parts of photos, this is what this tool can do for you. And there's a lot of techniques on masking and how to do it well. We're doing a okay job here. And as you can see, we're at the part now where you want to really fine tune it. And I'm moving pretty quick here. I'm not taking my time and being overly careful or worrying about being perfect, because I know I can always paint white and fix where I screwed up. And if you have a Wacom tablet with a pen tool, sometimes these little detail edges are much easier with a pen than a keyboard and a mouse. I highly recommend learning a Wacom tablet or using one if you have access to one. In fact, the little bamboo model, their lower end model, you can get that for fairly cheap. And then let's go to our white paint here and let's undo that boo-boo. We don't want his wing disappearing on him. Add the graceful curves. We can always clean up more afterwards. And this part of his head here. And now if I hit the mask tool again, you'll see how much tighter I am. And this is basically what you would be doing with the pen tool, minus all the clicking and anchor points. And then this is not the easiest of objects to cut out, but if I were, let's say, to do so, I'm going to hit Control J again, and then hide our original background image here. It's a lot closer than what we were getting originally. We have more of the head. We're not missing this foot. There's still some green showing. But again, now we could even go in with our magic wand tool and select the green and just hit delete, which is a more permanent way. And our tolerance is a little bit too high there. So let's go here and let's try that again. Maybe we want to keep it. Who knows? We are zoomed in quite a bit, so you see a lot of your imperfections. If you zoom out, he doesn't look too horrible. So what do you do with something like that? Well, what if we were to open another image? And I actually did this earlier. Did I name it? Yes, I did. I named it Scared. I found a little girl running away scared. Ah! We're going to come here to this image. What I'm going to do is right click on it. And I'm going to, can I? Actually, never mind. No, I'm not going to right click. I'm going to take this bird image. I'm going to drop it off. So I'm pulling it straight down. Now it's its own little window. Now I can take this layer and drag it into this image and let it go. And we can close this bird image right out completely. And nah, I'm not going to save. We'll go to our move tool. And we have a big bird here. Now, here's where we can get a little bit fancier. If you hit Control T, or you can come up here to your edit menu, I believe it's, yeah, and transform. But I like Control T, it's much quicker. And it puts this bounding box around the bird, because we're on the bird layer. Now I can click and drag. And I recommend whenever you resize an image in any way, hold Shift. Because if you don't hold Shift, you're only going to change one direction and make your image get skewed and ugly. So if I hold Shift and then drag, I can shrink it down so it's a little bit more standard size. Let's make him a kind of a scary bird, though. He's big. That's why she's scared. And then if we come up here to the corner, I'm letting go of Shift now, and my cursor changed to a curve. Now I can rotate my bird. And then I can come up here to the middle and bring him, and see how he looks now. Now it's a little scarier. Ah, this bird is scary. And then when I'm done, I just hit enter, and that saves my change. So that's where cropping things, and I just kind of got lucky here. Both these images were kind of washed out and faded looking, so this bird actually kind of matches the color space of this image. And we just created something fun and somewhat believable. If you want to make that more believable, you could zoom in a little bit here. And then you have your blur tool. And what you can do is just on these hard edges, blur it slightly. Because if you look at her where she's in motion, it's not perfectly crisp. There's a little bit of blur there. To make it look like he's actually part of this image, if we blur him a little bit, just on the edges, not all the edges, just some of them, you know, the ones that stick out to your eye, is looking a little fake, it'll actually make this image a little bit more believable. So now you see how his feet look like they're more in that image and not pasted in there. These are just some of the little things that you can do with a few tools. You can make this a black and white image now if you wanted to. I could go more as an image. And I could go auto tone and fix some color issues, auto color, auto contrast, or I can go to mode. And I can say grayscale. And it's going to ask me, hey, you got more than one layer here. What do you want us to do about it? I'm going to say flatten. So if I say flatten, it's going to basically take this layer and merge it into this layer, and they're no longer separate. So if you ever do this, make sure that's what you want. Another option is to save it first and then as a different name, so you have a copy of what you've done. So I'm just going to go ahead and say flatten and discard. Now we have a black and white image of a bird attacking a little girl, and she's running away scared to death. Or I can just hit Control Z and undo that. I have my layers back. You could add in more elements. You know, if I wanted to, I could add another bird by going Control, or I'm sorry, not Control, clicking and dragging this layer down to the new layer. And if I come here to the Move tool, you'll see I have two layers here. Another bird. But we want two identical birds, so that looks a little crazy. We'll Control T, and we'll transform this guy. Again, I'm going to hold Shift and resize him a little bit. And in fact, let's go layer. Oops, I can't do anything yet because it's there. We're on this layer though. So let's go layer. That's not what I want. Image. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, probably not. Transform. And let's flip horizontal. Now we've rotated this bird the opposite way. He's kind of coming in. Yeah, I guess we don't want to do that either. Doesn't make sense in the image. We'll put it back and just Control Alt Z. Or I'm sorry, Control Alt Z to undo all my little steps. He's being attacked by a bunch of these guys, but we'll give him a slightly different attack vector. I'll rotate him a little bit more this direction. And bring him down. There, now it's even more scary. She's got a bunch of birds coming after her. You could do that as much as you wanted. But I think you get the idea here for this little part. So we'll go ahead and close this. And no, I'm not going to save any of that. And we're back to this layer again. What are some other these things you can do with these